And good evening. This is Stan. Welcome to the Rovertime Podcast, episode number 28. We've been away a couple of weeks due to holidays and just general lethargy on stuff. But we are back. Going to be probably just a couple of topics, but as everyone knows, we always find a way to ramble on and make everything stretch for the full hour.
Yes.
We have with us today, we have not his alter ego, not his evil twin with a beard. We have the actual Dr. Manhattan.
Hi.
We have Lex back from traveling the country.
Yay.
And we have all government all the time, Crow.
Hey. No. Not.
Absolutely. How dare you?
That's
hate speech.
That's hate speech. Yeah, I'm so triggered. I am.
All right. So I think one of the first things I want to talk about tonight is now, let's see. Clinton talked about it in his campaigning. Bush talked about it in his campaigning. Obama talked about it in his campaigning. Trump talked about it in his campaigning. But Trump is the one that finally made the move and is recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
Yeah.
Woo, yeah, okay. I don't care.
No. I think this is a super important thing for Trump.
Yeah, this is awesome.
Because here's the thing. Trump didn't actually do anything. He just stopped impeding Congress's wishes, right?
He stopped kicking the can down the road,
Yeah.
which all other presidents have done with North Korea, with this and everything else. Just keep kicking it down and let someone else deal with it. They all talked about it. He actually backed it up.
And this is the other thing. He is also recognizing the sovereignty of another country and their decision on where their capital is. Literally, there is no good way to spin this against Trump. Trump literally took an issue that he can just be like, no, Congress passed this. Israel says this is their capital. I'm not going to tell Israel where their capital is. That's dumb.
Yeah.
Like, okay, they may not own the land, but I don't, like Tibet's capital isn't freaking in Tibet at this point either. Like, they don't own their country. We don't all sit there and say we don't recognize freaking whatever, dung pile they claim is their capital to not be their capital, right? Like, this is all just minutia. Like, whatever Israel says is their capital, that's their capital. That's all I care about. And like, everyone's gonna be like, oh yeah, that's totally reasonable.
Except Linda Sarsour, who is never reasonable because Linda Sarsour just can't.
She doesn't know how to be reasonable.
Well, I think I think the only, and I'm sorry, I had to grab some bottle of water here. And I think then Trump moving, wanting to move the embassy is the only thing that's actually happening. Is we're moving the embassy, but the UN ambassador to Israel, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, is like essentially backing, saying you all should be ashamed of yourselves in the UN for essentially decrying this. And it's like, I mean,
yeah, the entirety of the UN is just going ree.
And the other thing I thought about is, I'm sorry. So exactly, keeping stuff status quo has achieved what?
Right.
Zero. It's achieved nothing. So why not show, in my opinion, one of our best allies that we support them? I don't. And again,
I think it's a horrible way to sell it as like we're doing something for Israel when really he should just say, no, this is a sovereign nation. Then we're going to respect where they say their capital is. There's no discussion about this. Like, if China said their capital is somewhere else in their country, we wouldn't be like, no, we deny friggin' Taipei is your capital, right? Like,
well, no one's saying that. And that's the interesting thing, is because, again, Clinton, Bush, Obama all said, I mean, granted, they didn't sign anything or do whatever, but they all said, in my mind, Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. So they all said it. They just never did anything about it.
Crow, stop honking.
I was just saying, who's sitting in their car?
Someone outside's honking.
But I find when Chuck Schumer is backing
You mean
the
Chuck
move.
Schumer?
Yeah, when Chuck Schumer is back in the move, it has to, it's like because him and the Crypt Keeper always try and find any way they can.
I like that name for Pelosi, but I don't know if you should insult the Crypt Keeper by comparing the two.
Well, yeah, the Crypt Keeper did have some bits of humor and talent. So
yeah,
but I mean, and yeah, Linda Sarsour, whatever.
Honestly, she's just a meme.
irrelevant.
I think at this point, she's not someone you should take seriously. It's just like memes, bro.
Yeah, and then for the Palestine to say they're going to have a day of rage.
Oh no, they never have those.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly the point. It's like, okay, so it's a Friday. I mean, you have days you just don't call it a day of rage.
Yeah.
It's like it's just I don't understand.
I'm reminded of that one bit from it was like the first Street Fighter the movie, where Raul Julia was just like, for me it was Tuesday. I'm like, yeah, exactly, fucking Palestine. The rest of the planet.
For you it was the most important day of your life. For me it was Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
And so I mean, and I think the bigger point is which is driving, of course, CNN, the liberals, everything crazy is, once again, I mean, and for the most part, I mean, there are a few who hasn't, but another campaign promise that Trump has followed through on, which politicians, they can't seem to wrap their heads around that. It's like, actually saying you're going to do something and then doing it.
Yeah.
Well, what they're really going to be shocked when the election comes around and Trump says, here's all the promises I could keep unilaterally. And here's how many of them I did. And it's going to be this almost complete list. And there's going to be like a couple at the bottom, and he's going to say, I didn't do these. People changed my mind. I know I said I was. Here's why I didn't. And he's going to have this reasonable reaction to why he didn't.
Yeah.
And then
exactly.
I need a better Congress to do the rest of this. If you give me this Congress, I will deliver on these promises. And people are going to be shocked when voters listen to that and believe it.
Well, and again, and as much as, CNN, MSNBC want to, make his list of accomplishments as a, list towards the gas, as heading towards the gas chamber. Americans look at it as, okay, he told us he's doing that. Now, to Lex's point, there's always going to be, I think, especially, when politics, it's like everyone makes promises, but then when you actually are there and realize what it actually takes to get some of these things done, when you realize it's, it's not that easy. Sure. There's
like really fucking difficult. And
yes. But I think overall, and really some of the stuff he hasn't accomplished has been because the Republicans aren't supporting him, and so, I think it's going to, he's getting from his supporters.
That dichotomy is going to sell his second term at this point, is the fact that he's keeping those promises, and that the people stopping him from fulfilling his other ones are going to be the people who are opposed to him. And it's going to end up being an honest politician Trump like paradigm, which is going to be so weird to watch go with, versus career politicians with tons of connections stonewalling the agenda of their voters. Because a lot of these voters, I mean, this is gerrymandering the way it's been. A lot of these voters have voted for Trump.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing.
And to that, I would almost argue if he runs a second time. Because as the way things are going, could you imagine him like being, you know what? I'm going on top. It's like he's already
That's
off.
Not going out on top, though, is it? I mean, is it like a stink on your career if you only have one term as president? That's what I remember hearing.
But not if you choose it.
Okay, fair enough.
Because he's also going to be in his mid-70s, and it's like you'd be like, I mean, and maybe I just don't think it's completely out of the realm of possibility that he would say, you know what, I came in, GDP is up, I got it up to the way it's
He'd be
heading,
like, I came,
4%.
I saw, I
You know,
counted.
I got everything. I really think one of the biggest linchpins is going to be if he can get the wall started. The wall's never going to be finished in 4 years. That's never going to happen because it's such a monumental thing. But if the wall is not approved and started, then I could see him coming back.
I don't know. See,
rerunning.
I think that he can. I think he can definitely take honest immigration numbers at the end of this. Say, well, we'll be looking shortly after midterms, right? And he can make the play that we don't need the wall. We just need serious immigration reform. Look at what happened with just the threat, with just the belief that they wouldn't be allowed to stay indefinitely. How many of them self-deported? I was right. We don't even need to start the wall. There are certain spots, and he says certain spots that definitely need it because they're so close to urban areas or to stop drug trafficking, but it can be a tactical thing. And that he can sell to his own supporters. That's the only people he has to sell not building the wall to is his own supporters. And so literally all he has to do is say, tough deportations, a hard line on a few subjects. He gets a deal on DACA that precludes it ever being an issue again. He eliminates anchor babies. If he can get all, then so that would, I think that would have to be a constitutional amendment. If he could get those, he could forego the wall and the budget issues around it and still call it a win, quote unquote.
You know, and I think, you know, and to your point, you know, one of the biggest thing, and people on the border and, you know, people in ICE have said he's letting us do our jobs. You know, he is actually enabling us to do our jobs, which is, it's like, okay, it actually, to your point, Lex, kind of shows, you know, yeah, maybe they actually can be successful if they are allowed to do their jobs and have this kind, you know, like you said, have this actual fear of, oh crap, I'm breaking the law. I am here illegally. And, you know, but because I still say, because it was a huge thing, I understand your points. I think if the wall's not started, I think that, I mean, he might come back again just because he, you know, his ego might not let him,
maybe,
you know, run a second time. But you know, the wall really has been his baby, you know, and it was even seen during the
wall,
thing in Pensacola. The wall. The wall. You know, the people were chanting, build the wall. And, you know, so I mean, it's still a big thing, but yeah, you know, while we're speaking of Trump, I'd like to also kind of switching gears here, talk about, I don't know if any of you saw the video clip of Joy Behar of The View. And
dude,
and
you know me, I fucking love Joy Behar.
Mean, she,
not sarcasm at all.
She, not 2 days ago, but on Friday the 1st, I'm pretty sure she orgasmed live on stage when she was reading the false reporting from ABC saying that candidate President Trump ordered Mike Flynn to make contact with the Russians. And she was, he's going to jail, and he's going to jail, and he's going to jail. Then Monday, once it's all found out to be, again, more fake news, more rushing to get the story out there as quickly as possible, it was actually President-elect, and he was working within his legal rights.
He was doing his job.
He was doing his job and wanted to make contact with Russia about how to end ISIS, which, by the way, we've declared war. We've declared victory in the war in ISIS. So I found that, and then coupled with this past Friday the 8th, the story coming out that according to sources, the Trump campaign was sent an email and the decryption key on the 4th of September, the 4th of September for the WikiLeaks about the DNC. And then later that day, So we actually got the email, and it was actually the 14th, and it was a day after it had gone public. I don't. They keep just making the same mistakes over and over, and just. I mean, all they are doing is
because they never accounted. They never accounted for Trump to even or maybe any Republican, to be honest, to be in this position, because they were like, "Oh, we got this in the bag," and now they're just like, "Well, fuck." Now we got to rely on the tactics that we've been using the entire campaign, and they don't understand. You can't fucking do it. It's like it makes me think of robots that are meant for assembling cars and shit, and you try and tell them build a couch, and they just don't know what the fuck is going on or something.
I mean, I think it's part of that. I think it's just that somebody put it really well. I was watching a video somewhere, and they said that Trump supporters would have had a much easier time with Trump losing because they had already prepared themselves mentally for it. They didn't need any cognitive dissonance for that to happen. But Hillary supporters had so convinced themselves that it was in the bag. And remember, the media that kept repeating the 99% chance to win statistics and all of the polls and all that, they were right in there. They were just the same consumers, just on an everyday basis. That's all they heard for months. So literally, the second it's no, you lost. Now they have started.
It's just fucking earth-shattering.
Right? They started from this premise that they were robbed, and literally every single bit of information they get has to go through that rubric, and it has to be shaped and put into this. Well, Trump's illegitimate, and then as time went on, it's well, if he was illegitimate, if he actually had lost the vote, we would have had something on that now. Or if he had actually conspired, we'd have some evidence of that. Now he's just incompetent. And now it's going to keep trickling down and down. And after the midterms, they're probably going to, there's going to be an adjustment period because the Republicans are, especially now, probably going to pick up seats. Because with Franken resigning, and they're losing someone in the House already to sexual harassment scandals.
Which I can see more of those coming too.
Oh yeah, they're coming a mile off, man.
Right? Yeah, you're just waiting for that who's gonna fall next, and and
not even it's basically almost a drinking game at this point. If it goes 2 days, take a shot. If it goes 1 day, you have to take 2 shots or something. I want to see if somebody's come up with some really complicated bingo game about this shit.
Honestly, I think this is just a public hysteria at this point because
it is.
Did any of these accusers have evidence?
Well, and honestly,
evidence. That sounds like a supremacist term, Crow.
I actually am on board with that. I mean, Franken resigning. I mean, granted, we had a photograph. Okay, fine. It was but he was before. But the person in that photograph, Leanne Tweeden, forgave him. So why is it our outrage outweighs the victim's outrage over this?
Because it wasn't just her.
Well, I understand that, but that was what empowered the other women to coming out. But I mean, to me, to Crow's point, I'd be like, let's go with this hearing. Let's have a hearing. Let's do. I mean, I am due my day in court. But with Franken, I think I've heard this several times, and I agree with it. This was not about sexual harassment. This is the Democrats wanting to take back the moral high ground and say, look, we got rid of this guy, because of these, things. Now you need to get rid of Trump.
Yeah,
if he's elected. You need to do this to them. Forget the fact that, there was also John Conyers, I mean, however, I think that moral high ground, if in the end, a lot of these,
if it is
these settlements that all start coming out, there's going to be a lot more pawns dropping.
So here's the thing: the Democrats,
the moral high ground, like you were saying, I think whatever they do, I don't know, maybe they have renounced what they did in the past, the Democratic Party, that is, because hey, party's flavor and all that. So them trying to claim the moral high ground, to me, at least in my mind, is I don't know, some twice convicted murderer trying to say, hey, I did this good thing once. It's dude, what? You still got a lot. I don't know. Maybe they have renounced all that shit that they did in the past.
This is the thing. The Republican Party luckily never had or has been dealing with this kind of problem for a very long time, because we had decade of liberal media types literally hunting every Republican who had any allegations of anything untoward ever against them, looking. So if you came out and said a Republican senator, a Republican congressman did something untoward to you, it was instant news. Like, there was no way. Like, I'm surprised Herbert Walker got away with, being a senile old man for this long. But, he is a senile old man, and he was the president, and he's middle ground now, right? But at the end of the day, the Republicans basically already had this purge. Trump is a huge outlier in the party as far as having womenizing issues, right? And it's even the gay Republican congressman is a cliched stereotype now, because they all kind of got ran out of the party. Also, it wouldn't be a big deal at this point to have a gay Republican. Like, we'd just be like, oh, yeah, that's a thing. He sucks dick. Cool.
Yeah, I'd be like, cool. He takes cock.
Yeah, we're still all about lowering the taxes and decreasing the size of government and having lots of guns. Like, cool. Okay, we can all get along with that. Cool.
It's just that it's two different types of ass we like.
Right? Like, this is not a deal breaker for us anymore. Like, we have bigger fish to fry, right, as a party. But the Democrats never had to deal with this because they were insulated. If you made these allegations against a Democrat, you went down. You had to go to town with Hillary, right? You had to go against the number one protector of of somebody who did these things before. And people, I've had Facebook friends trying to post up like, Clinton got impeached over his sexual allegations, and then yada yada. And then I'm like, and then they post like the list of all of Trump's accusers, none of which have any evidence, none of which have actually gone to a trial, none of which have gotten a settlement.
He wasn't impeached for that. He was impeached for
lying under oath. Yeah, which I point out, and then I link the list of his accusers and the crimes they accused him of.
Way worse.
Oh, like, I didn't even realize how bad it was.
Yeah.
He has 3 rape allegations.
Oh, God.
Like, just flat out. No, like it was questionable or quid pro quo. Like, just honest to God.
It was throw the woman over the desk. Do your business. Zip up and walk out.
Just when you thought Monica Lewinsky was the only one worth noting.
Monica Lewinsky was at least seemed to be consensual. Yeah. I mean, that was at least it seems like a lot of these other ones, it was
only a 50-year-old man getting oral sex from a 20-year-old intern. So that's better. Agreed. Totally better.
Totally that's for the daddy issues there, but yeah, I guess that's better.
Right?
Oh, God.
The moral hierarchy we're putting this into just makes me cringe to the level that I'm.
Well, but you know what? But that actually is kind of a little bit of an important point, which with the, I guess, almost uncertainty of these accusations, they are literally lumping like Al Franken's photo of putting his hands over, with Bill Clinton's raping, like literally there's no levels. It's all the same. Yeah. And that's like,
it's the revival. It's the revival of Puritan America, man. This is what we do every so often. We try to purge and be like, everyone's got to be moral. And like, nobody wants to talk about homosexuality or any of like deviant sexual acts anymore as like the perversion. Which I can agree with that. Like, I'm fine with that being the status quo now. But now they need to find something to lord over people as a moral high ground.
And so they're all just like, rape is bad, okay?
Right? Or like bad. You copped a feel during a comedy act over body armor. Like, honestly, this is what, like, if nothing else had come out about Franken, I would have just been like, no, like, Franken doesn't need to go anywhere. He didn't do anything particularly wrong. It's literally a comedy act. It was uncouth. But is a comedian at a military show. Like, what do you expect? Like, and again,
do they expect it to be G-rated in that setting ever?
Right, and it's like, it's body armor. Like, let's be real, people. This is not like a sexual act. This is just a guy doing a comedy thing, and it's funny. Maybe not as funny today, but it was funny then. Get over it. But then all these other things started coming out, and I'm like, oh well, yes. Sorry, Al, you're done.
I think where Al didn't help himself is essentially during his apology, he essentially is like, well, a lot of these are false and a lot of them are not how I remember. So essentially they're all lying is what you're saying, Al.
Yeah.
Mr. And then, these people come out, oh, he's always been a champion for women by calling them all liars. And doing, but with some of these people in his brain, he might not see anything wrong with it. Because like you said, it was a comedy thing. It was during the bit. That's funny, right? That's funny. Me trying to force my tongue down, me lunging at someone and trying to force that was a funny thing. It was meant as a joke.
It's just a prank, bro.
You're not that funny, Stuart Smalley. Just calm yourself down.
When it's just,
I find I think he was a Republican, the one who offered his employees, wanted them to be a surrogate mother and just offered them like $5 million or something to carry his children because his wife couldn't have a baby. Yeah.
I mean, if he doesn't want to go to a lab for insemination, then that's kind of creepy. But like,
well, that was part of it. No.
Okay.
No, he wanted to do things the old-fashioned way. And
that's creepy.
It's like, okay, so you're asking one of your staffers to have a baby for you. What? I mean, that's like, okay, yeah, that I think we can all agree is
that's a bit out
dude.
There. That's
like what?
So here's the thing. Here's the thing about all of these allegations that kind of gets me is that the context of the employment scenario changing actually changes my view on it. So if this is a tiny startup where like these people have been working together for 8 years and it's built into a business, like all of a sudden I'm like, you know what? No, I can see this. That's like a legitimate conversation I could see happening. I'd still be weirded out by it, but I would not think there was anything like overtly offensive. But yeah, when you're in this like these very manufactured hierarchies of people where you are an elected official or you're appointed onto a board of directors or you're a senior manager or even like a high up mid-level, and suddenly you have this like pseudo authority over people. Like it's not real legitimate power over them because you just control their work life and they can quit their job. But holy crap, that's actually a little bit of actual power now. And it lacks that reciprocity of a relationship where you can say, hey, you're being a creepoid, stop.
Well, and then the problem becomes like we see with a lot of them is, okay, yeah, you're being a creepoid, but many of you, and again, I'm not victim blaming, but why do you wait so long? Because you wanted to make sure that your career and you were set, like these ones with Ray Moore. Like this was 40 years ago.
Did we hear about the developments there?
Oh yeah, where the
yearbook is forged.
Yearbook is forged. He claims his signature is not forged, but all the little notes are. And then coincidentally, he ruled against her in a divorce settlement about 15 years ago. So, he was a judge, so he probably wasn't up for re-election or anything. But now that he's running for something, now suddenly I have to bring this all out. And it just keeps falling apart more and more. And it just almost kind of leads to, Al, yeah, these accusations like against Roy Moore were horrible, but as you wait and when more pressure is kind of put on these women or these accusers, seems to me that like they tend to backtrack kind of a lot. So, of course he did say in the coming weeks. So, but it's almost by saying he's resigning. It's like, well, now, no one's going to really press them, but it's like, doing some due diligence. I'm sorry, Lena Dunham. Yes, I understand that,
Wouldn't it be amazing if Al Franken found the way to survive the scandal, just being like, yes, I'll step down in like an unspecified amount of time, and you just kind of kick that can down the road until people like
exactly
catch up with fucking reality, and then they're like, oh wait,
weren't you supposed to be?
And then you say, Yeah, and then you just say like, important business of the people, and I didn't want to leave anything in the lurch. And then like a couple weeks later, you're like, yeah, by the way, I mean, it was a comedy bit, and it wasn't really that big a deal, and these other accusers, are kind of crazy, and hey, no, I'm actually a good guy. Like, don't worry about it.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, I mean, it's just, it's almost like those news stories. It's like the rush to everybody to get the news out and do this stuff. It's like, I understand there's a few here, Al, but let's let some of this stuff play out. And I especially appreciate, when you see on Twitter all the virtue signalers, it's like, okay, TikTok, whoever you are, TikTok, because I'd be willing to bet there's probably some skeleton in your closet that someone's waiting to drop a bombshell on. So I would be some of these people. I would be a little. It's
even worse.
Conan O'Brien, especially. One of the things he tweeted was, I'm waiting for the reboot of the world where women are in control of everything. I'm like, didn't you work closely with Al Franken for like a while? And I'm sorry, don't you have like
the set of SNL is just littered with people who are like, I really hope nobody says anything about us. Like that's
in those situations, there's so much that went on. Late night partying and all that stuff that went on there. But I'm just like, you guys need to Conan. It's like, I understand you joke, but on your show you say a lot of things to women, and I'm sorry. Isn't your band all women and your sidekicks are all men? Your sidekick's a man. You're a man. I'm sorry. Where's your, you want women to take over? I'm eager to see who you're going to surrender your job to there, pal.
I will totally take a ginger version of Conan O'Brien, though. I'm just saying, that might work. That actually might work on national TV.
I would absolutely. Give me someone that looks like Karen Gillan. I'm all in. All right.
There's on the flip side of this, where we had it very legitimate with the Brock Turner thing, right? Where we had a very legitimate case of sexual assault, right? That was definitively horrible action.
Yeah, that got
and the way it was. Yeah, and then it was. But here's the thing about it: it was reported as like this dude kind of like drug a drunk girl out of a party and raped her behind a dumpster, right? Like, and you're like, this is horrible. He definitely fucked up, but then you read the actual story and why he got that deferred sentence, because they had been kind of hooking up at the party, and then they were both wasted, and they both kind of fell down, and he took some liberties behind a dumpster, and all of a sudden now you're like, so that's why he didn't get the actual rape charge and he got the actual crime that he committed. That's what he actually got charged with and convicted of. You're like, oh.
Yeah,
but again, it's that rush to judgment. We want the story.
I think with that one, what also didn't help is his father, saying, he's going to get 20 years of his life ruined for 20 minutes of bad judgment. That's not helping. No. And now, did you hear that his lawyers are appealing it because saying it was behind, they're even appealing his conviction and his current sentence of having to register, because they feel that saying it was done behind a dumpster, because it wasn't behind an actual dumpster, was inflammatory, because it was apparently behind just some garbage bins. It wasn't an actual dumpster, because dumpster makes it sound like it's some dirty behind an alley thing. He literally could have gone off into the ether. He had been, let's be honest, he kind of had been forgotten. Not really forgotten about.
Oh, no, with the Me Too stuff, now, he's totally, his story had been so eclipsed, a few years it would have been forgotten about.
Yes, but now, because after this light sentence he got, they're appealing it. Well, congratulations, Brock, you have just made yourself asshole number one again. It's just, I understand having to register. Well, I don't understand, but I'm sure that having to register like that, it was probably been horrible. You know what? But let's be honest. Yeah, you made a bad judgment, a really bad judgment. Girl passed out. Okay, you got to have some kind of a repercussion. And honestly, not going to prison. I mean, going to prison versus, because clearly looking at him, I don't think he would be well equipped to go to any prison.
No.
So, but again, but I find that kind of the outrage over that is quite interesting when from the people who are outraged by it, and these same people weren't. I didn't see much outrage from them over Kate Steinle's murderer walking away.
Poor Kate.
No.
And I also didn't. I don't know if you heard, but one of the people in that Facebook kidnapping and torture of a mentally challenged person is being given no jail time. That just came down today.
Okay. If you guys need me, I'm going to go and get that figured out.
Well, if you're gonna figure something out, first head to Pelosi, all right? Because
I'm closer to Pelosi. Of course.
Nancy Pelosi, posting about after the tax thing how policy doesn't matter, people matter. I'm sorry, you fucking bitch.
Oh yeah,
you don't give a shit about people. But I just find that a little bit of that everyone's again all about protecting women and protecting stuff, which we all
and
want.
most are Republican,
and how horrible it is, and how the justice system is just racist and xenophobic and white supremacist. And damn well that, especially in the Kate Steinle and in this Facebook thing, if those races were flipped, it would be
an uproar,
riots, fires in the streets, cop cars flipped. There would be mass destruction.
It would be just total chaos.
How many? Together. Exactly. And
I'm okay with the world where the white girls don't get justice. I think we've reached goal for the political left. They've been complaining for decades how everyone only cares when white people die, and we have moved past that.
We definitely have.
achieved his goal. We are in a post-racial world.
Yeah, Obama achieved his goal by driving racial tensions into the
thanks, Obama.
50s.
How long until we get to start saying thanks, Trump? Like,
no,
I feel like we need an inverse meme for this, because Obama actually passed policy, and we all got shit for everyone blames Obama for everything that he can't control. It's like, well, yeah, but we really blame him for things he can.
That's actually kind of an interesting comment, because I feel like it's almost the flip, because how many people did you hear when Ferguson went to plunge into riot, Baltimore, Charlotte? How many people blamed Obama? Yet, how many people immediately blamed for Charlottesville Trump?
Mm-hmm.
And it was a much smaller scale than those. I think Trump actually does get blamed. He gets blamed for, he's getting blamed for North Korea.
He's getting blamed for the fires happening here
for successful missile launches, because we know that they literally were not, working on anything during the Obama years. They were just letting the program sit. And then in the last 6 months, they went from 0 to, oh, hey, look, we can send a rocket into space in 6 months, because they haven't been working on it for the last, 30 years. When Obama was in, nope, we promise we were not doing anything. I find, to be honest, that was, that lack of in my mind, that lack of essentially holding Obama responsible for stuff really kind of led to my worldview, because I felt he got a free pass on a lot of stuff. Now, is he now with Trump in? No, because yes, I do feel that, though a lot of us do feel more emboldened to actually say something, because I think we realize that there's more people out there that think
Think like
have
that.
the same thought processes that we do. Not
I'm
nearly
also-
as many as we thought.
I'm also less worried about the IRS coming after me, so
Yeah.
By the way, these are not jokes. Like, these are things
I
that
understand.
legitimately happened under the last administration, and everyone's just like, "No, it's cool, whatever." And you're like, literally, we had the enforcement arm, the typical group who would control the government that we like always worry about. They were specifically targeting people for political beliefs, and everyone was like, "Nah, it's cool. They paid some money. It's over." And just nothing about it. Like, it was not. That should have been an administration destroying story. Like, how anyone could legitimately look at the Obama administration.
There are a lot of stories that should have destroyed the Obama administration. In retrospect.
That's the thing. Some of them, you're like, these were just mistakes. I can get making mistakes of policy and decision. So, like, Fast and the Furious, totally, I believe that was an overestimation of their abilities, and that was a mistake. I don't view that as something directly wrong. Hypocritical, yes, but just a mistake. The IRS stuff, I definitively say is corruption. Like, that is exactly the thing you have to worry about with the federal government. Is that level of soft administrative bias being programmed in and then not taken seriously when it's called out.
Okay, you know what? He's been kind of quiet. Crow.
Yeah.
We're into the anti-government time.
Yay!
Have at it, buddy. I know this is your forte.
Honestly, though, when it comes to what Trump should do, I don't care about the whole Israel shit. I don't care about the immigration crap. Honestly, I don't think that the whole government enforcing immigration laws is really necessary, because as far as I'm concerned, as long as you just don't give them welfare, just no welfare for immigrants, and then just open the borders. But so my main priority is spending. We are spending way too much damn money. So we have to cut Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and defense. Those are the 4 biggest parts of the budget. And yet when you say that, people go apoplectic. So my main priority is just cutting spending. I don't care about anything else.
Do you think, I would say in just looking at defense, again, speaking from a point of ignorance, don't we spend a lot of money on defense where we're defending other countries?
Yeah.
The entire national defense budget is 15% of federal spending.
Yeah,
and do you know how much of that is for like us defending, Sweden or something? Like, how much is us having boots in other countries?
Well, that's the thing. If we having boots in other countries and having them in proximity to deploy there is only marginally more expensive than just having them in like Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Like, it's more convenient for the troops, sure, but at the end of the day, like we have to employ these troops, and that's the high end of the cost, and we have to have their equipment. And if you have to rapidly deploy that to issues around the world, all of a sudden, like, you start losing that cost savings just having them home. Like, that's the thing. We're going to spend the upkeep pretty much either way.
Well, my only thing was, I'd be like, well, okay, so how much are these countries actually, if we're there, are they actually contributing? You know what I mean? Is there
they do pay.
Yeah.
Japan gives us money to protect them, and so does South Korea.
Okay.
So they are
probably not enough, because I would bet those agreements were stamped out a long time ago, and the amounts are probably not super drastically adjustable. So a couple economic shifts either way. Like, Korea could probably afford a lot more. Japan can probably not afford very much.
Of course, I also sit here and think about, when we're, literally trying to find money, and, again, not to rewind the talk, but then when you hear we have $17 million that were paid out in sexual harassment lawsuits from taxpayer money, it's like, yeah, please tell me again why, to Crow's point, why I should give you more money. Because, I have to pay for this and that for you. Yeah.
So honestly, that's not even a rounding error in terms of total federal spending, though.
So that's the thing. On the defense side, a lot more of the cost savings are probably in R&D. Like, the Joint Strike Fighter was kind of a failure and a really expensive one. That is like the quintessential program you point at, is like, that was handled badly.
Or the F-35 fighter jet. That's another one.
Yeah, like, these are, I think they're Yeah, like that's the aircraft are one of those things where like we have a really bad process for getting those, and that happens with a lot of war tech at this point, where we're trying to make it overly complicated to the point where you need so many vendors with so many clearance people with so many scientists, and they all have to be dedicated and well funded. And at the end of the day, like you're getting these very marginal benefits, and oftentimes you're getting inferior products even because at the end of the day they're still being they're trying to be budgeted down so they can afford more of them, or because they're still dealing with budgets down the road. So now you're like cutting down materials and parts, like backup systems for them. And then you're always like in this weird position where you're spending insane amounts of R&D, and then you're trying to make the end product as cheap as possible. So you like don't have armor on Humvees for IEDs. And that became like an issue at the start of the Iraq War. And you're like, oh, well, perhaps we should have thought about that maybe a troop carrying vehicle going into the front lines should probably have some armor for explosive devices. I don't know. Maybe somebody think of that? No. Okay, good. We're going to move on. We're going to do it now. Cool. And then that's more cost on the back end because now you've got VA benefits that are going to have to be paid out for the rest of their lives. Like these are military folks that are owed that money, and like nobody wants to take that away, obviously. But if we could minimize those casualties, and especially those, disabling casualties, like that's a huge savings for us too. But those are all things you can only do on the very long term.
Yeah, and pull out of Afghanistan, that's another thing you could do.
You could, but at the point, like if ISIS becomes an issue and you're like, oh, now we have to go deploy against ISIS.
I don't give a shit about ISIS. You have 20,000 jihadis. I mean, just
who are going to control a sizable chunk of the oil industry. Like, this is the thing. We live in a global market, and like this is a thing that we have to deal with. If we're going to start the wars, we have to finish the wars and finish them in a proper way.
When is it going to be finished? That's the thing.
This is the thing. Pulling out doesn't do anything for us. We just end up with where we were before. And like at the end of the day, we're going to end up with another 9/11 because you're not going to end up with a nice, stable government that loves us.
No, we're not. Dude.
Yeah.
No, if you take a look at what's actually stopping another 9/11, it's not the Afghanistan war. It's putting a solid steel door in front of the cockpit on a plane. That's what's stopping another 9/11.
I really don't. Like, I'm not talking about an actual 9/11 where they fly planes. I'm talking about an attack like that. Because here's the thing. I legitimately do think having war zones that jihadis can go fight us in against our military saves a whole lot of effort of them trying to get here and kill civilians. It's easier for them to go fight the U.S. military and make tactical gains there that they can be proud of versus them trying to make the symbolic gesture of killing lots of Americans to martyr themselves into heaven. And like, it's a horrible thing to say, but I'm kind of okay with that, and it's kind of why we have a military. Like,
a lot more people are dying in these wars than who would die in a terrorist attack, though.
I mean, actually, the numbers, like, over 12 years in wars, we're maybe now approaching 9/11 numbers, so it all depends on the scales we get to.
What are you talking about? If you take a look at how many people died in Iraq, how many soldiers died, it was over 9/11 casualties.
I'd have to double check that, but I don't think our casualties were that high.
But nonetheless, I'm not talking about just our casualties. I'm talking about the total number of people dead.
I don't give a fuck about the total number of people dead. This is a country that literally empowered Saddam Hussein for 20 years. Like, you fix that problem yourself or you don't. He was a supporter of terrorists. He paid off suicide bombers in Israel. He had video of it, and he had an open bounty for it. So, yeah, at the time, that was enough for me to be like, yeah, we're going to depose you. And his kids were horribly fucking worse. And he did want fucking weapons of mass destruction, which is a whole nother issue of escalating problem over years of if you just ignore it, it'll go away, ends up being a really bad policy. So that's the thing. At the end of the day, like, yeah, there are different ways to handle this stuff, but non-engagement is probably not going to be an ideal one for us.
Regardless, we still have to cut spending, and there's a lot we can cut in defense, especially the F-35. We don't even need fighter jets at this point, really. We have drones. Drones are better.
So like it's not that we don't need the F-35 or a similar product. We just need a better process for it. Like getting rid of the idea of having a more advanced fighter craft is probably not an amazing idea, but having this process where we have 1,000 companies involved and all of them have their own divisions and everything is siloed off and nobody's sharing really developments.
And you're doing it in every single state.
Yeah, and you've got production has to be parsed out to all of these different districts, and you're like at the end of the day, like we're just wasting a ton of money on this, and it's costing insane multiples of what it should. That's where we can get like real savings in defense. And like Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security, those are just harder because you basically just have to tell people pound sand, like that the money you were supposed to get. Yeah, sucks to be you.
Yeah, basically, I think that the biggest myths in economics just have to be addressed. This idea that Social Security is some sort of investment account. It's not.
No, God, no.
It's not.
No.
Yeah, because sometimes whenever I hear politicians talk about Social Security, I feel like I'm the only person in the world who's actually read the Social Security Act of 1935. Because if we read the damn thing, it says right there in the Social Security Act of 1935 that Congress can change the benefits and taxes whenever the fuck they want. So you're not owed a damn thing. Even the Supreme Court in 1960, in Nestor versus Fleming, ruled that you are not owed a goddamn thing. And in that's been decided in the Supreme Court in 1960.
Yeah, and that's been reaffirmed multiple times over too for other ancillary benefits to Social Security. Like that's not just the retirement benefit. That's been asserted in the disability, unemployment benefits. Exactly. Literally every component of Social Security that has been reaffirmed so many times over. When people are like, "Oh, with the lockbox," I'm like, "There's no lockbox.
There is no lockbox." Exactly. And
the converse of that is that do you have any idea how much money the federal government owes Social Security, and that we count that as part of the national debt? Like literally, we can lower our national debt just by being like Social Security is an entitlement. It's not not an entitlement. It's just a social safety net.
It's a welfare program. It's a transfer. Yeah. It's always been an intergenerational transfer of wealth. I mean, let's be real here. That's what it's always been. That's what it continues to be.
Well, so that's the thing. I don't know. Lately, I've been reading up on basic minimum income. There's a lot of different acronyms for it, but like the idea of just handing people like a basic level check.
That's going to cost a lot of fucking money, though.
Maybe, but here's the thing: like, it doesn't cost as much money as you think it does until you look at it and you're like, "Oh, we already pay out so much." Like, it has to replace other programs, right? So it's not just that you give them this plus what we have, which is what some people are suggesting, and you're like, "That's dumb." But if you replace a bunch of programs, especially the social ones, where like Social Security, Medicare, if you replace some of these programs with like it's basically the idea of single payer healthcare, but applied to life and like the basic necessities of life. Like, yeah, there's actually some cost savings there. And if you have a really corrupt, bad system already in place and you're just replacing it, on the short term, it actually might be a really big improvement. And on the long term, maybe you can privatize it back out again and it might actually be decent. This is where I've kind of come to on the medical insurance side of it. Like, I could live with a 10-year plan where we have a single payer system and like then it becomes privatized over time. That would be like my ideal right now, because holy shit, private insurance it might as well be a government program, how like insanely badly it's run, because it's this thing you have to buy. It's a process you have to buy into. It's so complicated. It's overly regulated.
Here's the thing, insurance should only pay for emergencies. That's it. I mean, I did an experiment where I tried to use insurance versus cash. A flu shot at Walmart cost me $20 in cash. Then I had someone else use insurance to pay for it, and the same exact flu shot was charged to insurance for $443. I mean, when they know you're not looking at the bill, they inflate the prices. It's ridiculous.
Well, I know that, but
that's how you get.
I work in health insurance, so trust me, I am now. Well, I mean, I'm sure with that particular one that I would hope that there would be a contracted rate and all that stuff, but. Yeah, I mean,
it's the accounting games. It's where we charge you $429 for the flu shot, but we only pay 80% we only pay 20% of the cost of any charged coverage.
Oh yeah, so, I mean they do that under the. I mean, a lot of them do it if they have no contract with that particular carrier that you're submitting to, because then, if you have no contract, then whatever they charge, that's what they can bill that member for. I mean, that high amount kind of shocks me, because I would imagine that if they had any sort of a contract, that there would be probably some sort of there should be investigating to way over billing, because that is wildly out of the realm of any reasonable amount. $400 for a freaking flu shot. Yeah, that's wildly. Now, but to Crow's point, I agree. One of my biggest problems I had, again, working in this business with Obamacare, was forcing people to buy it, or you find them. I'm sorry, but if I don't have health insurance, how does that affect Lex?
Well, it came as a component of the ability to cover pre-existing conditions, right? That was the idea, that if you didn't have insurance, or if you had other insurance that lapsed for some reason, whatever, your insurance company out of business, but let's say it's no fault of your own, right? You had insurance, your company went under, all of a sudden you have no insurance, you don't have employer provided. How do you get coverage for your pre-existing condition with everybody else, right? Well, that's hard, because all of a sudden now you've incentivized people to just not have insurance. So now we were like, oh, but if everybody has to have insurance, at some point they paid into this pool of insurance. So it's the cloudization of health insurance.
Yeah,
all health insurance is just this one pool of money.
And you know, and I understand the pre-existing. If the company goes out, and most policies will give you a 6-month gap if you don't have coverage for 6 months, because they understand of transitioning, that they will, you know, give that look back. Mm-hmm. But to require everyone, or you find them, I mean, how does that help someone, say, who's young, like Crow? How old are you, Crow?
Huh?
How old are you?
Approaching 30.
Approaching 30. Well, you're still young. Oh, so just say a 20. Just say a 20. You know, like Mark. You know, he's in his early 20s. You know, where, you know, he's not. You know, he's out on his own and having to pay. I mean, you know, I'm not a good gauge for how much insurance costs, because I work for the company that provides my health insurance. So, you know, the amount I pay is significantly less than what it would normally be. But the amount it normally is shocking to me, because I'm like, how the fuck could anybody afford this on a monthly basis? It's ludicrous how much, to Crow's point, where it's like, for a family where literally, you're right. What you're looking for is that almost a auto insurance thing, where it's for something that is only catastrophic. Doesn't, you know, you got to pay for routine things, which is, you know, like you said, a flu shot's $20, you know, maybe a regular, you know, wellness checkup, okay, $100. But you get in a car accident, I need a major surgery, okay, that's where it kicks in. But when you're talking, it's like, okay, well, if you don't have it, I mean, I don't know any, but you heard of plenty of people who were choosing to not get it and pay the fine because it would have been cheaper.
Yeah.
And I think that to me was in a case of when you're like, I understand, like in my state where like auto insurance is a requirement. And I understand that, because if you're driving a car and you have an accident, that affects other people. And I understand, but you know, even in your example, Lex, all that is really affecting, if I don't have pre-existing, all that's affecting is me. So if I am making the choice to not have health insurance, and I understand sometimes people don't have a choice, you know, but again, you have to make a choice on, if I have a pre-existing condition, I need to find a way to get some sort of coverage.
So this is the thing about when you start in an industry with light regulations, and then you slowly escalate it up to the point where you have medical insurance where they can't offer insurance across state lines. They're required to cover myriad of things by each state they're in. They have to have customized plans for each of them and separate pools for coverage and liability. And all of a sudden, like, you tack on a few more things, and it's another thing here and another item here, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, this health insurance is not a good deal for me. And in general, it stops being a good deal for a ton of healthy people, so they stop buying it. And then the people that really do need it and would be really advantageously helped by that kind of a system, where you have like you're basically talking high deductible plan, right? That is basically like the ideal medical insurance that we all talk about, where I put, you know, I keep $5,000 to $10,000 in my bank account on average. That's my goal, right? Like I can get that on a credit card. Like I can get access to that level of cash if it's about my life and safety, right? And then above that, I'm going to need someone to help me out. That's responsible, right? We can all agree that's a pretty good level of risk for your average American. And if we can have a system that works like that, awesome. And if that has to cover some people that, you know, do get the worst case scenario, or, you know, with chronic diseases becoming a larger expense, great. We can probably stomach a little more of that. But the system has gotten so overinflated, and it's not the medical insurance providers necessarily doing all of it. They have a good chunk of the responsibility, but it's the medical industry as a whole.
Oh, absolutely. And to Crow's point, I mean, I actually even have a friend that I speak to frequently who lives in Japan, and he is often shocked at how much doctors in this country charge for stuff, and not even talk about just medical services, prescription drugs.
Mm-hmm.
They should be ashamed at the amount of money that if I didn't have insurance, it's like.
But those are all like fake numbers. It's all just fake
absolutely.
math.
It's just, and you're right. I mean, and it's just, you know. But again, it's one of these things. Well, that's just what everyone charges. Well, it doesn't. It's obscene. And trust me, being in this business, I've seen doctors submit claims for an ultrasound, and their charge amount, it wasn't their contract, but they wanted to charge $5,000 for an ultrasound.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are you on? I'm like, you put some gel and you're running a thing over it. You want $5,000? I mean, heck, I remember when I had my knee replaced, and I went to physical therapy, and the physical therapist put a reusable ice pack on my knee. And I got my EOB. He wanted to charge me $15 for putting a reusable ice pack on my knee for 5 minutes. I'm like, I'm out. I'm done. I'm done with you. I'm like, I mean, now granted, he contractually got paid $0 for that, and that's what he had to accept. But I'm like, you are literally reusing. You're using a freaking reusable ice pack. You want to charge $15? I'm like, you should be ashamed of yourself, you ass.
Well, that's the thing. It's all obfuscated, and that's the big thing. We have no transparency in medical care or pricing or any of that. The things that come with that. And sometimes
they're getting better. I mean,
they are.
They're,
it is, and that's
trying.
The only part of the ACA that I was really happy with was the requirement for some standardization and how insurance is presented. It was horribly done, but I was happy for the effort, right?
And you know, I mean, and I know from my company, you know, they are trying to come up with, you know, tools for members. Be like, okay, here's what you should expect to pay for X service, kind of giving them a estimate, you know, because you're not going to get that from a doctor. You know, they're never going to be like, hey, I need this done. How much does it cost? You know,
so this is the weird thing. I pay cash, even with my insurance, because my deductible is, I keep a high deductible on my plan, and so I pay a little bit lower on my insurance rate every month, and I don't go to the doctor that often. So literally, I do my checkups, but outside of that, I pay cash. If I go in for like a hurt ankle or anything, I pay cash, and I go to the same doctor, but they know that I'm handing them a credit card at that visit. So the visit costs less.
Yep.
It's just a flat 15% off the top, like right away, like without no questions asked. And I'm like, and then every time they're like, oh, we're gonna do this and this, and like, here's your options. Like, they're like, it's gonna cost about this, and this is about what we charge for that. And I'm like, so you actually know what you're gonna charge me? And they're like, yeah, but if you use insurance, then we don't know what we're gonna charge you, because we have to go check the contract. We have to figure out what we're actually gonna get paid on, and then we have to like find ways to like cover the actual cost of anything there and make sure that we're not losing money on patients. And I'm like, that I actually understand, and this is why. There's not even a discussion. It's just 15% right off the top for cash. And then when it's been like, when I've had stuff where I'm like, oh, you know, this is going to be a little expensive. Like, I had to get a CT scan off my insurance, and they wanted to send me to a specialist at a network. And I was like, well, how much is that going to cost? And they're like, oh, it's about $300. I was like, oh, like, let us call the office and see if we can knock that down a little bit. And it ended up being like 175, because they knew where my budget was and what I could afford, and that I didn't argue about the stuff, right? And that we can't get with insurance. So that's the trade-off, and it's not awesome. By the way, funny story related to this. Buddy of mine, he's a huge computer nerd. He did Bitcoin ways back, lost a wallet, found his wallet, 55 Bitcoins in it.
Oh, Jesus.
Yep. And I was like, so you gonna quit your job? He's like, no, because earlier this year he found out one of his kids has autism. So he's like, yeah, he's gonna need some like special therapy.
He's gonna need most of those Bitcoins, yeah.
And so now he's like, I'm gonna need medical insurance for the kids, and he works for a Fortune 500, and he's reasonably high up there. Like, he's pulling down a good salary from them. He's got full benefits, like all the perks of working for corporate IT. So he's like, yeah, I'm just probably gonna keep the job for that, and it is all for that medical insurance, because he's got one of those Cadillac plans.
To be honest, if I ever, was to a point where I could, retire, I might find a way, if I could stay at this job for like 10 hours a week, just to pay for the insurance.
Right.
To be like, just because of those, just to know I have it, and just, for, like Crow mentioned, those catastrophic things. I to me, people having, stay with companies, I mean, that is honestly, insurance is considered with a lot of employers as part of, like, okay, here's your salary and benefits. Part of your
compensation package.
It's part of your compensation package. So, looking at the time, and we have quickly gotten our hour. I would like to thank you both for joining. We had a very nice discussion. Dr. Manhattan had to leave for a party. I was only slightly worried that he was, has grown his beard and cocked his gun and talked about Nancy Pelosi. So I'm not really sure what party he's going to.
Questions.
Yes, but thank you everyone for joining. I saw Mark Wazz was chatting with people, and there were a few viewers. So thank you all for joining. Thank you, Crow and Lex, for being here. And everyone have a great evening, and we will see you all next week.
Later.
Good night.